Well, welcome to the Digging Trenches podcast. That's totally getting left in, by the way, for sure. Where we seek to help you raise up your kids to love Jesus and to follow him all of their days. We are chilling in the office today. Just for backstory, it has been a fun couple hours now handling technology, and clearly Satan did not want this to be recorded, and I'm only slightly anxious as we record it that this will be recorded. But Lord, use it for his glory. I am joined once again by Pastor Nathan Lawrence, lead pastor of Valley Baptist Church. And not in the room, but very close to the room, is Jacob Johnson, our worship leader. Huge thanks to Jacob. Most of these podcasts, he is the one behind the camera, clicking the switches, making sure everything's looking good, making sure all the levels are good. This could not happen without him, so appreciate you, man. And we're giving him a microphone and a camera today, and we're going to reference him several times so that he has to click the button to put the camera on himself. But the topic today is sports, our kids' sports, and have seen that growing for some time. But not just sports in and of itself. I'm thinking of band. I'm thinking of piano lessons, of extracurricular activities that we have our kids in that are good things, but especially when we see how they have exploded recently with travel sports and endless opportunities, it seems, for your kids to get plugged into extra things like that. We wanted to cover that topic because we've seen it affect our own church and families struggling with these things. I think there's been a pretty standard battle, I think, from the youth minister perspective on Wednesday nights of now all of a sudden sports practices and games are starting to get scheduled on Wednesdays. And the youth pastor, of course, is not going to be a fan of that, right? He wants all the time he can get. I obviously want all the time I can get as well. But in really meeting and talking with parents, I don't think they're blind to the reality that man, sports has eaten up a lot of time. I've heard people talk about they're always up and down the interstate for different things. I'm just now getting into this world. So I have one who does gymnastics on Wednesdays before church, and I have one who plays t-ball. That is pretty low commitment, just every Friday night. They don't have any other practices, which if you watch a t-ball game, you know there's really nothing to practice. They go out there and have fun. So it's something that I'm walking into myself. But Nathan, what are some of the activities? You introduced your family last time, but what are some of the extracurricular and sports things your kids partake in?
Yeah, I mean, my oldest is 16, so we've been in this world for a while. Definitely not always feel like we made the right decisions, but learned some things about it. And we've been involved in t-ball. Starting in t-ball, Dad, so excited, got a boy. He's going to play t-ball, and it's going to be great. And, forced Titus into lots of sports. And he was inclined to want to do them, so it wasn't a major force on all of them, but he wanted to do them. And we also do some piano lessons. We've done ballet. We do a good bit of art stuff because some of my girls are not so much athletic. They are more into the art stuff. We've done band for a very short stint. It didn't last long. More I could say, but for the sake of my children, I will refrain. So we've done a decent amount of things in over the years.
All right. I remember, at least with Titus' schedule when he was playing basketball, it was like so short notice of like, hey, this change. So you got to drive like 2 hours. It's like, if I tried to do that at the church, man, people would revolt. Like, hey, quick change, bring your kids 3 hours down the road for us.
That's right. Today we're just going to meet in Birmingham for fun, and then, tomorrow we'll see what happens. Yeah, that would never work in anything but kids sports.
That's
absolutely.
Right. So Jacob, in your expertise, if those who don't know, Jacob was a student athlete. I think he is the most athletic out of all of us, for
no
sure.
question.
For sure, more than me.
And no question more than me.
So, Jacob, give us some insight for people who are wanting to make it to a collegiate level of sports. What kind of time and dedication did that take for you to reach?
Um, it was mostly, honestly, the time of my parents, I think is the best way to explain it.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of time that obviously the student, the child has to put into. But as I got older, I really appreciated how much my mom and dad put their time in, because there's a lot of weekends. So to get to the collegiate level, at least with what I did was tennis. So I played tennis for a year at Point University, but to get there, I was playing tournaments usually every other weekend. And so we would drive different parts of Georgia to just play these tournaments Friday through Sunday. Sometimes I'd make it to Sunday, sometimes not. But it costs a good bit of money, and it's the hours of driving, however long it is, it's being there, and so they're there the whole time. So definitely, obviously, if you want to make it to at least some collegiate state of playing the sport that you love, takes a lot of time for sure. After school, prioritizing is a big part of it. Making sure that school is still your first and foremost, but really learning how to prioritize when you can get your school stuff done versus when you can get sports, and just really enjoying it, having fun. But as I got older, I really just understood how much my parents put into it, because it's a joint effort. It's not just something you're doing, and you can't make it there on your own. So really relying on the people that are pouring into you and there for you. And so that also goes into the community aspect. I think anybody growing up playing sports, the biggest thing that I've gotten from it growing up, and then even as I still do sometimes with people, is the community aspect. I think it's a great opportunity for people to learn how to really work well with people, to meet a lot of people of different cultures, of different styles of life, and just where they come from, and just how to really discipline yourself on a mental and community level. So I think it's very important. So yeah, I just a lot of time obviously has to go into it, but it's really prioritizing that time, I think, is the most important thing.
And that's what we're trying to cover today, is help parents think through that. And several conversations I've had with parents, they're fully aware that these things are demanding, but they're still good for the kids. So I guess to help meet parents where they are, what are some of the benefits that you've seen from kids being engaged in sports and other activities in the local community?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of positives that come from being involved in sports or extracurricular activities. And as parents, our love for our kids drives us to want to do good things for our kids. And so when we involve them in sports, we love to provide new experiences so that they can learn more about who they are. I love basketball. I don't like football. I don't really like any of these sports, but I love art or music. And part of growing as a human being is having these different experiences. And so, and I do think that our culture is highly values experience. So we're kind of wired to want new experiences and want to provide those. And there is a lot of benefit to that. We love our kids to have fun, and sports and these things can be fun. We want them to learn how to work in a team and learn to be coachable and experience the joy of success with a team, and learn how to cope with the pains of failure and losing. And so there's so many benefits, and I think for every parent, kind of what they value and the different benefits they see may be a little bit different, but there's a lot of benefits to these things.
Yeah. Right on. So I was speaking to one mom a couple weeks ago, and she mentioned that her kid was involved in a certain sports team, and he wasn't enjoying it anymore. But her response to me was, well, I don't want to give him the right to quit something. I want to build that character of sticking with something when it's tough. And then, well, if he's not plugged into other things, he's just going to sit around on his phone all the time. So I do want to commend parents for sticking it out and want to resonate with some of the hard things that come with it. But in light of that, what are some of the dangers or the things you need to look out for as your kids are in sports, in the extracurricular things? What are some things that parents need to have an eye out for in participating in those?
Yeah, I think that, there's so many good things, right? And you're exactly right. There are pitfalls. There are things to watch out for. And I think just the fact that we live in a fallen world, we have a sinful heart, especially pre-Christ and in Christ, trying to see that heart remade. Yeah. We can take good things and still make them bad. Yeah. And I see that in this realm a lot, in my own self, and it's pretty easy to see it in others at times too. We can take sports, and I think it's fertile ground really for us to express our idols, to be honest with you. Sports itself can be an idol in our culture, in our hearts. We love sport. I love sports. we love sports, and can make it an idol, but it is so ripe for all the different idols to pop up. You know, if we have the idol of, honestly, if we make our children an idol and their happiness, and then we are going to let them drive the boat and be involved in everything that they want to be involved in. And we're going to really struggle to tell them no to anything. Yeah. And just that ending up way overcommitted is a pitfall in these extracurricular activities, that we wear ourselves out, overextend ourselves to the point that we're suffering in every other area of our life. Yeah. The idol of success, you know, we want to be the best, and we can express that through wanting our kids to be the best. And it's not that hard on the sports arena to find the kid that no longer really is enjoying sports, but they have, you know, because they practice so much and have so many individualized coaches helping with this, that, and the other. And again, not any of this is necessarily in and of itself bad, but it goes so far that sports just loses its joy, and it's no longer fun because they're being driven. Sometimes it's from the kid. Sometimes the kid is internally driven, but sometimes it's from the parent too. The parent wants to be the best and is maybe with good motives trying to help their kids discover, you know, that same mentality, hoping that's a good thing or wanting that to be a good thing, but it ended up not being. We can also, the idol of finances, right? We want to, as men, we want to be good providers. At times we can take that too far, and, you know, maybe part of that expression of being able to provide well and have plenty of money is to be involved in the expensive side of the sports. You know, sports nowadays can get pretty pricey, and we can overextend ourselves in trying to show, well, see, we can look, I'm a good dad. Sure, if you want to be on the travel team that costs this much, really we can't afford it, but we're going to make it happen and make it look like we can.
And that's really become a business lately. You see so many people who at the collegiate level or pro level, they'll start doing these camps, and there's, you know, it's a business behind it. So you got to remember that it's easy to become susceptible to things like that.
Absolutely. And so, you know, these are just I'm talking about idols, but there's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of ways it can be negative and end up having a negative impact on your kid or your family when you didn't want it to.
Jacob, would you like to relate, I guess, from that world, from living in that, what were some of the pitfalls or the dangers that you had to guard your heart against while being a serious athlete?
I would not say serious.
You made it further than we did.
I would say
I made it to Pee Wee football. That's where I stopped.
To piggyback a little bit off Nathan, because I'll speak on both. The big thing for me when I was growing up, which I touched on a second ago, but was the mental side of things. I was super competitive. So like Nathan said, some kids are super, super driven and want to do well all the time. So I learned later in life. It took a minute because I wanted to do well all the time. And I was not happy when I had days where I was just off or didn't play as good. And so for a little bit of backstory, I played baseball most of my life growing up, and then tennis came later. But for both sports, in both aspects, whether it was at high school or middle school when it was baseball, or just growing up in Little League and baseball, or college, kind of the same thing, like all areas of it. The big thing for me was mental. And so one thing I appreciated a lot from my parents was that I think they found a pretty strong balance of that support level that we kind of talked about, where sometimes it can feel like parents push their agenda on the sport that the kid's playing, or sometimes they take a super back seat and really don't want to say too much and kind of let the kid take over in a lot of ways. But I think my parents had a good balance of, obviously we're here for you, and my dad played baseball growing up, so he had a very athletic mindset in that ways too. But for me, the mental side of things was the toughest part. So it was just really, really nice when my dad and my mom would find ways to encourage on bad days, but also encourage on good days when you're playing well. But again, I grew up in a Christian household, so they had those mindsets as well. So it's very different. A lot of, if you don't grow up in a Christian household, could be different conversations. And like just the way those play out, it's just very different. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's different scenarios. But I'm thankful in the way that they always tried to lead it toward a positive, here's how you can grow from, like, what did you learn from today? Even though like I could have been like raging or just mad about if I lost like in the first round of a tournament, one of the tennis tournaments. Like I was not a happy kid, and it was probably awful to deal with me sometimes. But again, they always looked for that positive outlook of, okay, yesterday was not the day we hoped we were going to have, but how can we learn from it? What did we get from it? What are some things you can take back and work on? Obviously, we still love you and we think you're amazing and doing a great job. So I think just having that mindset of positive progression always is the best form of outlook on it. And so I was always very appreciative of that. But the mental aspect for me was the most challenging thing.
Yeah, it's like trying to guard against your kid finding their identity in this sport, because even if they're excellent, they get a full ride to college for this sport, they become a professional athlete, they go to the highest levels, everybody hangs it up at some point, and everyone's life goes on past these points, and really trying to guard against creating this athletic identity that, you can get injured in a heartbeat. Something could happen and you could be done at that point. And really trying to ground their thoughts in, again, that their identity is Christ. If you're raising them, as we implore you to here, that your identity is Christ, and these are awesome blessings that we get to be a part of while we're blessed to have them. But in moving more towards the conversation of church attendance, I really want to spend some time that it's not just that we want you here. Like, of course we do. We want you here. It's sad to hear like, oh, we're gone every weekend because we have a tournament or something going on. It's more than that, though. We believe that Jesus established the church off of the confession that he is Lord, that he died on the cross for our sins and he rose again, and that one day he's going to return for his church. So we don't see church merely as a bunch of people who get together and hang out once or twice a week. It's we worship to gather a risen Lord. We worship to receive grace together. That's kind of the heart of why we do the Lord's Supper. We're sharing communion together. We're worshiping together. And our heart is really that some of your closest relationships in the local church are in where you worship together. Those relationships are forming. And I mean, if you're married, you understand this. You don't develop a deeper love for someone unless you spend time with them. So you need to be spending time with the Lord, obviously, but you need to be spending time with other local people that you have covenanted together in the local church, that you've committed yourselves to one another for growing together in the Lord. So it's not, I really want to be careful in saying when we say guard your time, and really to cut to the quick, we want you to really guard Sunday morning. Especially. Of course, we have connect groups, we have Wednesday night stuff, and we want you there too. But really, I would encourage parents to really hearken on Sunday morning as non-negotiable. Not because the pastors want me there and I need to be a good church member, but really, I think we need to develop if I miss a Sunday morning, I'm missing out on the grace that I could be receiving with other people. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, we try to, I'll call it a red lines. We try to have some lines, some boundaries, some things that if we find ourselves negotiating to cross this line, then we really need to step back and look at it, because something is probably out of whack. So, somewhere, talk about those idols. Probably those idols are at play in some way. So not that this is legalistic, and not that there could be never, never, never happen. Yeah. But if I find myself trying to excuse absence from Sunday morning worship, which, I mean, granted, it is my job. I'm going to be there. Right. But if, my family's not, then that's a time to step back and say, what's going on here? Why are we missing out on this? Because we profess as believers that the local gathering is immensely important. Yeah. And if I'm trying to find, rationalize a way to not be a part of that, I really need to step back and say what's going on in my heart. Could there be an instance where you miss one Sunday morning and that doesn't mean you're going to hell, but like that, there should at least be this should be a massive exception and not the rule. And if there's the pattern of missing Sunday morning, then I dare say there is a problem, right? That's one of the lines for us. Like, this should not happen. Yeah. And so we do work very hard to guard, especially the Sunday morning. Yeah. Also, the pattern of being involved in the church life beyond that matters to us. And so it doesn't mean we can't ever miss the other things. But, is there a pattern of us being involved in the life of the church? Because I don't want I don't want our family to be a Sunday morning only family. Yeah. That's not going to build those relationships like you were talking about. I don't want to be legalistic about it. I think I could go too far on that side too, but I want to be there on Sunday morning. I want my family there on Sunday morning, and I want my family involved in the life of the church. Those are the things that we try to hold to on that particular topic.
Yeah, and I've always been told, and I share this with several people, you make time for what you care about, and you need to take honest stock of just seeing where your heart is. Is church life as important to me as my kid or my kid's desire to succeed in sports and be involved in those things? It should certainly be that church has a higher priority than success in sports or success in extracurricular things, and that if something has to be sacrificed, it's got to be sports. It has to be. Again, please hear us. It's not you have to be at every single thing we put on. You have to have wisdom. You know your family better than we do. You understand the heartbeat of what time you're able to give to things, but really taking stock of your home, and does every member value the local church the way they need to? Again, are they known? Do they know? Are they plugged in? Those are the questions that need to be had, that moms and dads need to be having together. So
yeah, I think that if you are finding reasons to not attend church on Sunday morning, that, tying it back in with idols, like I think that likely there's an idol at play there. I think that if you're charging things to your credit card for your kids' activities that you can't pay off at the end of the month, I think there's probably an idol at play. There's just some of these things that pop up that show us, if we're missing church on Sunday morning, maybe it's because we are chasing success too much, or maybe it's because we're chasing our kids' happiness and putting it above everything else. And so there should just be an opportunity to step back and figure out what's going on there so that you can reorient your family back to the right spot.
That's right. So let's say parents hear this, they make adjustments, they see where they need to free up some time to be more involved in the church, and but they're being faithful. So they're here, they're involved in the church, and they have kids in sports like we would encourage them to do. But the calendar is busy. You're not unfaithful, but you are busy. So help parents, counsel them, I guess, managing spiritual needs. So we're big on family worship. We're big on parents leading their kids. When you have a picture in your mind of a family together, they're headed to a sports tournament, they're headed down the road, they're meeting other families who may or may not be plugged into church themselves, may not be believers on this team. What are some of the points you would like for these families to keep in mind as they go out to these things?
Yeah, I think that, I've heard you talk about it. I've heard it on podcasts you've done before. I think that there's great opportunities in the car, great opportunities to have spiritual conversations, to work on scripture memory. My wife actually is probably better at doing that with the kids than I have been. A lot of time, maybe it's because she's with them more on those trips. I don't know, but she's better at some of those things. You have opportunities with other families to be evangelistic, to build those relationships for the point of pointing them to Jesus. I know many of the people listening to this aren't just have their kids involved in sports, but they're coaching. Yeah. They're assisting. I mean, that's a platform, in those kids' lives, but in that whole family's life, to be able to use those opportunities that way. And so there's good opportunities in these things, and in sports with the mindset of preparing your children for life out of them, which has some value. A lot of people see it that way, and I think there's some value there. There's an immense opportunity for spiritual conversations around these things. The ref, the ump's going to make bad calls. How do you respond to that? You're not going to win every game. How do you respond to that? Not just in life, but spiritually, biblically. How do we respond when things are unfair? How do we respond when we're mistreated? How do we respond when we win? How do we respond when we're the best one on the team or the worst one on the team? So there's lots of spiritual opportunities around sports done in a good, healthy way.
Yeah. I would love to see moms and dads leading their kids as they meet kids on the team, as they meet other parents. I love, as we, family worship in the car, totally doable. But what if some of those conversations were, hey, we need to pray for so-and-so. We've been playing on this team with them for so long. What if we tried to reach out? There's a free night on the calendar sometime. What if we had them over for dinner, hung out a little bit more, and really was intentional about praying for these people and trying to reach them with the gospel? I think that's redeeming the time and being faithful for where you're at. Jacob, since you had parents who were Christians and, as you said, raised you well as you were in athletics, what were some of the things you remember that they led you well in, at least as the calendar was full?
Yeah. So I'll speak kind of to what y'all were talking about with a little bit to the best way I can explain it is to the Sunday, being there on Sundays mixed with the tournaments and just time spent in the sport. So I'll kind of speak on it from their end too. And again, not to try and contradict anything, because there is a balance, but being at church is first and foremost, and they understood that. Yeah. So like I said, I'll use tennis as the example. When I started to get way more involved, started to play tournaments, working for state ranking. So to get to that kind of collegiate level or have colleges look at you and things like that, state ranking is the playing tournaments and working on getting your ranking higher is kind of the pathway to that. And so, but they did understand any weekend that we weren't doing anything tennis, we were always at church. Yeah. So whether it was Wednesday nights services, because the church I grew up in, they had full services on a Wednesday night. Okay. And then as well as youth for me, and then Sundays, we were there every single time we weren't doing anything tennis. So the Sundays, tennis tournaments, like I said, sometimes I would make it all the way to Sunday. Sometimes it was just a Saturday. But they did always instill in me that church community where God has called us to be is first. They tried to make that as clear as day, so that obviously I loved playing tennis and I loved being with people and being with all the other kids playing tennis, and it was fun getting to travel and do these different types of tournaments and see different places, meet a lot of people. Like, it's great, get to play the sport all the time. But they did constantly remind me, like, hey, we're not going to do a tournament for a couple weeks so that we can, for these next 2 or 3 weeks, be a church.
That's awesome.
Because we haven't. So they definitely made a point for that balance of, we're not going to do this every weekend. Sometimes it's an every other weekend thing, depending on what's going on. But they just always instilled that there was going to be church's priority, being with people at the church, being involved. And again, like y'all said, not just being there, but still finding ways to serve, use the gifts that God's given us at the church. So that was, I think, the biggest, I would say, just blessing of growing up. Because again, lots of conversations happen, lots of things are going on in sports. There's so many little details that no one sees, but they did instill that week in, week out. We have to be here when we're here, because God calls us to.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Great conversation, and thank you for listening. And let me offer up a quick prayer for our parents, and we'll call that a day. Father, thank you for this opportunity to speak on an important subject, and one that we want our kids to have fun and build relationships, build character in. But Lord, also know that there's many dangers and many idols that are possible while they're in those endeavors. So Lord, give our parents wisdom in looking at their calendar, looking at their priorities, and wisely guiding their children as they engage in sports and other extracurricular activities. So Lord, may your will be done in our church. May we glorify you, and may we be a witness in the local community for you, being upright and holy in character, and always pointing to Christ as the source of our hope and our life. In Jesus' name, amen. Here's probably the most important question of the whole time. Can 100 men beat one gorilla? You seen that?
I say yes.
Really?
Is that a thing?
It is blown up on social media. The debate if 100 men could fight and kill a gorilla before the gorilla kills
The 100 men?
Yeah.
Do they get sticks or anything?
No, bare hands.
Bare hands only.
That might be tough.
Do we get to
I don't
select the 100 men, or is it a random? It's like, I'm thinking, if I get Hulk Hogan in his prime, 100 of them, maybe.
Yeah.
I have faith in humanity.
Oh. Have you seen a gorilla?
Who knows? All right.